If Boston's a city of neighborhoods, it's also increasingly a hub of converging borders, and when they intersect, that can mean conflict or liberation, but always some kind of change. That's the territory covered in a collection of stories by a longtime activist from Jamaica Plain and a professor at Roxbury Community College. The title is Don't Mess with Tanya, and it's published by Aberdeen Bay. We'd like to welcome Ken Tangvik. Thank you very much for being with us, Ken.
Sure, Chris.
First of all, talk about your day job and how this book came out of that.
Well, I've been teaching at Roxbury Community College for 25 years. We have a great, diverse population over there that's it's changed somewhat over the past 25 years. But mostly folks from Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Jamaica Plain, surrounding neighborhoods, and I've also been working at the Hyde Square Task Force, which is a youth development organization based in JP and Roxbury, which I've been working there over 20 years as well. So I've been pretty much immersed in the urban culture of JP Roxbury for the past quarter century. So that's what I've been. That's what a lot of the stories in this collection came out of my experiences working in these two places.
The title story, I guess that was the first one you did, Don't Mess with Tanya?
Yeah, that was the first story that I wrote, and I think it captured the tone of the rest of the stories, and I think Tanya represents a certain character that I've met and dealt with a lot and come to appreciate over the years.
Of course, the story is about someone who is basically racially profiled by a clothing store owner, and she turns the tables.
Yeah, she does. I can't tell you how many young women I've known, particularly at RCC, but also in the Hyde Square Task Force, particularly black women who are sharp and can smell racism, feel it, taste it a mile away, and when they're confronted by it, they feel the need to act. And I can't tell you how many dozens and maybe hundreds of women who have talked to me, written about the ongoing problem of all they want to do is go into a store and shop in peace, particularly women. Women seem to enjoy shopping, from my experience, but inevitably they feel that they are watched, followed, harassed, whether openly or subtly through the aisles, and it just angers them a lot. And in this particular story, Tanya has had enough, and she concocts a way to school the store owner, and also, I guess, feel good. Yeah, I think it's human nature to get a little revenge.
Now, I know there are a lot of boundaries, demographic boundaries across this book, but some of the most interesting stories about people who have these boundaries inside them, that they act one way with one kind of person and a different way with somebody else.
Yeah, I think, a lot of, I like to place the characters in the stories in different situations that highlight how Boston is changing, how Boston right now, there's many different worlds coming together. On Center Street in Jamaica Plain, you can take a walk on Center Street down to Jackson Square T-Stop, and you can see Somalians, Nigerians, Jamaicans, African Americans, Colombians, Salvadorans, and hundreds of Dominicans. The Dominicans are everywhere in that area. But and I've lived a good part of my life in Boston, born in Dorchester. And it's just amazing how it's changed and how so many different worlds are coming together and clashing. And every day, whether it's little clashes or big ones, and they're not always negative either. They're often positive. And I wanted to capture both the positive and the negative interactions that are happening on a daily basis in what I call a new Boston.
Now, a lot of the characters have backstories, and when you start reading a given story, you go with the assumption that's taken, and later on it gets totally flip-flopped. I guess you've had this experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you dig a little deeper under the surface, I find that no matter how diverse the characters are that are interacting on a daily basis in Boston, there's a lot of commonalities as well. Human beings want and need certain things, and as much as we appreciate the diversity of all these different cultures and backgrounds, the bottom line is people basically are looking for respect, love, peace. They want their children to grow up happy, and once you get under the surface, you can see those common themes.
One thing I like in these stories, which I like to see in my favorite stories, is how people are actually coming up with their own narrative to deal with the world. You have a story about a teenager, Tito, who's bullied. And at first, his uncle tries to deal with that physically,
yep.
And his wife keeps him from going off that particular deep end. But talk about how he ends up dealing with that.
Well, Chris, that story's interesting. It actually came out of a student of mine at Roxbury Community College, an evening class, was actually a Boston firefighter, a Latino Boston firefighter. And he came to me one day, and before class we were talking, and he had a situation almost exactly as I described with his nephew. His nephew was getting bullied, beat up, kids were taking his money, and he had a background in urban. He was a pretty tough kid, and he wanted to go out there and deal with it in his own way. And his wife convinced him not to, but he was very frustrated. I said, geez, what could be the solution to this? How do you get around this? And so I didn't know what the answer was going to be. I started the story, and I had the young Latino kid, 14 years old, and trying to deal with a situation. And it was all about being a man and how do you get to prove your manhood in an urban situation? And a lot of the problems come up because young men feel like they have to prove their manhood at that moment on the spot. And if they don't, then they're not a man, or they're a wimp. And what I found and what Tito discovered in this is that to become a man is actually a longer process. It involves hard work. It involves discipline. It involves getting a mentor. In this particular case, his mentor was an African-American plumber named Willie. And it was a long process of himself learning through discipline and having a mentor that he became a man. And it wasn't about what the kids in the corner were defining his manhood, but he could define manhood for himself. And I think that was how that story unfolded. And I was content with how it came out. I really didn't know how we were going to solve that problem when I started.
Willie had a nice line. He says, "What you create yourself."
Exactly, and that's where a lot of these problems on the street happen, when kids let other kids define who they are rather than themselves. And so I liked how he found a quiet strength within himself.
Thank you very much for being with us. Ken Tangvik.
Thank you, Chris.
The book is Don't Mess with Tanya. Up ahead, Vida Hispana with Maga Troncoso.